and tech experts. They've helped celebrities and Fortune 500 companies innovate, tell their stories, and connect with millions of people. Tricia is an entrepreneur, starts businesses to create change, and Antoinette is an intrapreneur, steering businesses to create change. Between the two, they've started and sold companies, secured patents, built new businesses with existing companies, developed unique IP, won 2 Emmys, and their groundbreaking work has been recognized by Clios, Webbies, Shorties, and Cannes Lions. Welcome Antoinette Clarke and Tricia Clarke-Stone to our Viacom client session, and I am pleased to be moderating this session with the two of you.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Hi, so excited that you ladies are here with us today. This is awesome just seeing you both kind of together. I mean, what a dynamic experience that I was able to read. Your bios are just extraordinary. So thank you for sharing, just your time and also, having these conversations with us today.
Yeah, we're so excited to be here.
Thank you. I just want to hop right into it because, I have so many questions and I just want to see, between the book, I've read it. It's so inspiring. I guess just to kick it off, what made you decide to write this book?
Well, that happens all the time. We're twins. I'll start this. We wrote this book to really democratize success for people who look like us, to create a new operating system where you can define success on your own terms. And we really looked at Double Down as an opportunity for us to deliver a rule book, something we wish we had early on, and because it outlines the principles in an effort to give the next generation the tools, the tips, the tactics that they need to find success on their own terms. And it was also a great way to scale our mentorship, because the way we see it is, it's not enough just to get in the building, we need to get in the boardroom. And we wanted to basically change the face of business. It doesn't have to be the white, stuffy, conservative men. It could be 2 Black women from Brooklyn who define their path to success on their own terms. Also, when you look at kind of that self-empowerment space and self-help space, most books we were reading, it was focused on you. You have to do this. You have to go at it alone. And it's all up to you. And with Double Down, it's broken down into 2 parts. So part 1, it's all about finding the power that's within yourself. And then part 2, it's about doubling down on your crew and going in to nurture and inspire the power in others.
Yeah, and it's so funny, as I was reading the book, it's exactly that. There are so many books that we have that are available, and it's almost a cookie cutter formula, whereas yours, it's almost giving us the opportunity to look at it and apply it personally. And so I guess, is that really where you see, why is it now, I guess, is that perfect time for you to share this story, to have this be such a personal, experience and also kind of guide that you can share with others?
We think because of, when we look at everything that's going on in the world, obviously we wrote this book pre BLM, but we think it was time for us to really start to challenge the status quo, right? And as you can see, because we know you read the book, is the status quo is a big through line in our book. And we talk a lot about it. It's almost like the status quo is a character, in the book. And the status quo, I think, is a big part of why we're in the situation that we're in, because the status quo is not our friend. It's that get in line, wait your turn, you can't do that mentality that governs a lot of the world that manifests inside our head as self-doubt and fear. And that's kind of what we're all up against. And we really want to reject the status quo's conformity and conservatism, right? Because the status quo wrote the rules, it keeps you in that box, and it wants you to follow the conventional roadmap. It can't think outside the box, but you can. All of us can. So the status quo loves shining a light on these 2 mythical stories, the born leader and the overnight success, because then it lumps the rest of us, which is the majority, in the middle. And no one really wants to be in the middle, because what we should all be in the middle of is just taking over the world. The status quo will have you believe that you should follow this linear path to success, and it tricks you into believing that you're ordinary. None of us are ordinary, we're extraordinary, and we need to show our power to the world and activate that. And especially as Black women, sometimes we shy away from really expressing who we are and how we can deliver. But we need to evangelize ourselves and be strong in that commitment so the world can see what we really can do.
Now, I mean, I hear the status quo, and again, it is a big through line in the book, but it also speaks to us a bit of bravery it takes to kind of overcome status quo. Can you speak and give us just a little insight into how we can wield that bravery inside of all of us?
Yeah, I think, it's about staying grounded in who you are. And I think another big thing is about really identifying, being clear on what your biggest competitive advantage is. Because I think when you're clear on that, it gives you that self-confidence. And when you have that self-confidence, that bravery almost acts as that shield, and it allows you to continue to double down on it. Right. And I think it all comes into play once you really are very self-aware and you know who you are. And I think that starts with identifying what your superpower is. For some of us, it's really hard to figure out what that is, but it's at the intersection of where your passion and your expertise meet. So if you think about it and ask yourself a couple of different questions, it's the common denominator of some of your proudest moments. What really sets you apart from the masses? And what have you become known for? What's your reputation? And also, what do you do so effortless that feels like magic all the time? So essentially, it's understanding, elevating, and playing to your uniqueness and doubling down on it.
So, Antoinette, I mean, you've made your mark in the corporate world. You're currently at ViacomCBS. While Tricia, you've clearly struck out on your own, starting your own company. One of you is an entrepreneur, the other an entrepreneur. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So there are obviously so many different ways of driving change and achieving success. As we all know, an entrepreneur starts businesses to create change, and that's what Tricia is and has done. And I'm more of an entrepreneur. So I steer existing businesses to create change and opportunity. So despite their differences, they have so many similarities, which I feel like people don't lean into or really understand. They both, and I think a lot of it is because today, especially, I think entrepreneurs it's like the it thing to be. They're hot right now. Everyone wants to be their own CEO and entrepreneur. And everyone thinks they're like one idea away from an IPO, because that being an entrepreneur, that's what grabs the headlines and, the cover of Fast Co. But being an entrepreneur, you can still be applauded because you can still be that innovator. It's just within the confines of a bigger organization where you have the support. I don't have the stomach to be an entrepreneur. I get all the agita. So I love having the safety net and the infrastructure of being part of a bigger company where I can still drive change. And one of the main things I did at CBS was really going beyond my JD. So not really just doing what's expected of me in my job description, going above that. You're never going to become the best at your job or transcend it if you just stick to your JD. The second thing, I really wanted to focus on challenge the status quo in the workplace to drive change. And in my case, I started at CBS in the Brand and Entertainment division for only overseeing one daytime show. That's what I was hired to do. And as we all know, daytime is not the sexiest day part. The status quo was more focused on, prime time and late night are kind of where everyone wants to be. And daytime is sometimes considered a bit of a stepchild. And I thought to myself, well, maybe if we could package all of the shows together and really entice companies and brands to get into this day part. We also need to remember daytime is original reality. If we didn't have daytime talk shows, we would never have reality shows. So it has driven culture in the past. It was more about figuring out how we were going to continue to do that. And really highlight the narrative and show the power of daytime, which I think Antoinette figured out how to really lean into that element of storytelling. Right. And then also in order to effectively challenge the status quo, you have to find the white space. And like Tricia was talking about earlier. So for me, that white space was reimagining how we were selling and going to execute integrations in daytime. And since I was a producer for 12 years, I heavily leaned into my producer skill set and being innovative and developing creative ideas so we could leverage pop culture, gamification, and stunts, do something different where we could align with brands. So the show's DNA and the brand's DNA, put that together and create a larger and more impactful DNA together. So it's been such a great experience, and obviously having the infrastructure and the great evangelists at CBS who I work with and who I report to, it's been amazing.
I mean, it's such an amazing story. I think, oftentimes, there is a perception that you join a big corporation and you just kind of fall in line. So hearing how you're able to find that white space and really just carve a bigger, awesome opportunity with even just the same resources, it really speaks to the strength of your creativity. So thank you so much for sharing your experience that you're having currently at ViacomCBS. Tricia, you also, in the book, I read that you started an agency, even though you had never worked at one. What led to that decision?
Well, first, I thought she was crazy when she came to me and said, I'm going to start an agency. I'm like, Trish, you've never worked at an agency. How are you even going to know how to do that? So this is and I think, Denya, a lot of it is because of a little bit of what you alluded to. I saw a white space. So I was working with a lot of agencies because I was in the, media and digital space. And first off, I didn't see a lot of people who look like me on the teams, much less in leadership roles. Also, there was a bit of an archaic sensibility. There was also a lot of very traditional linear storytelling happening. Also, there was very much so monolithic thinking. People were solving problems all in the same ways. And there, frankly, wasn't a lot of innovation, and there was a lack of cultural intelligence. And I believe that the collection of my experience up until that point across media, digital, product development, marketing, and creative strategy had prepared me to really disrupt that traditional agency model. So I decided one day that, I wasn't going to ask for a seat at the table, that I would make my own. So after working for Russell Simmons and running his digital media company for 4 years, making that profitable and leading it to a successful exit, I felt as though, I had been working for about 10 plus years and working for a mogul like him. And then prior to that, MS Communications, that I had built up this level of confidence where I thought I can now go off on my own. So I went and pitched Russell Simmons on the idea of narrative. So launching a creative and technology agency really focused on redefining the rules of storytelling, leveraging code, technology, and culture to really hone in on a brand's narrative. So it was going to be one part agency and one part innovation lab. And of course, like Antoinette said, people thought I was crazy. But the interesting thing was when we first launched and press started to pick it up, so many people started to put us in a box because, of course, I'm Black and Russell Simmons is Black. So automatically it was this multicultural shop just launched. Yeah. And I was like, why do we have to be a multicultural agency? Why can't we just be a great shop that is redefining the rules of storytelling?
Right.
So what I did was really try to, double down even more so on the technology piece.
I like what you did there.
Right? Double down. And that's exactly what we did, because tech to me was really a great way for brands to reimagine and redefine how they bring their brand to life, and use technology as a way to do it. And because
they're not focusing on color.
Right. Because if you think about it, with technology, you don't see color. So yes, budgets really started opening up for us. And we were no longer pigeonholed into just being multicultural just because the two founders were Black. And we became really known as an innovation shop. And we started to lock in blue chip brands like JCPenney, Samsung, Under Armour, and a slew of new startups, and started racking up awards on the mantle. And people really started to take notice, and our billings began to rack up, and we became a multi-million-dollar shop within a couple of years. So I really felt like we made it. And then I remember distinctly about 2 years in, we started.
Story. She came home one day and said that she had walked into this meeting and with her creative directors and her team, and everyone in the meeting looked past her and looked to her white creative director because they thought he was the CEO. Because how could she be?
Right. This was before the meeting even started. I remember walking in, and I had on a killer dress, that I remember, and people were complimenting it. And the CEO walked right past me and to my white male group creative director, and said, nice to meet you. I've heard so many great things about your shop. We're so happy to have you here today. So that was, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. That was such an eye-opening moment, because here I am thinking, we are like on this high, we're being recognized and we're killing it because of the work. And we had reached a point, and I thought, okay, people aren't seeing color. People are just looking at our work. And we walk into this room, and that level of bias that just filled the room at that point, that there's no way it could have been this Black girl from Brooklyn that disrupted things and could be leading this team and this to bring us to this place. But by no means could it have been me. It had to be my white creative director that brought us to this place. So I even get choked up thinking about it now.
I'm getting tears.
That there's no way it could have been me that brought us to this place. So that was a real eye-opening moment for me. And
I think that's also when we started even coming up with the idea of writing Double Down. We really wanted to shine a light on Black women, people of color, that we can get in those positions and we can get to that point. And that we needed to normalize us and how we look and where we show up in the world, and we can get to those positions and we can do those things.
And then the fact that within 5 years of me starting Narrative, I had an exit. Narrative was acquired. So I had reached the goal that I set out, so that people like us, that can happen. And so that's why us writing the book, for us to put down on paper that this was our journey and you too can do this, and here was our kind of blueprint, and you don't have to follow that traditional trajectory to get to where you want to go, and screw the status quo, because
right,
you believe it and you can.
And, Tricia, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I think oftentimes, I've even felt it, where you walk into a room and assumptions might be made, whether it be, are you the founder of this company, or are you the creative director? I mean, is there a time where you've walked into a room and kind of taken a step back and even thought to yourself, do I need to bring myself in a different light or bring a different presence as you enter the room? Or have you always kind of sat in that confident space and just allowed your inner self to project,
So I think being twins, this may sound funny to some people, but being twins has really taught us the power of connection and needing to individuate and really showing up as our authentic selves. Growing up as twins, of course, our mom dressed us alike, and there was always that wow factor. Wow, you guys are so cute. Wow, you're dressed alike. Wow, you speak at the same time. So that really forced us to work hard to make ourselves as powerful as individuals as we were together. So we had to figure out what made us unique and different. Like, we wanted that same wow factor as a singleton that made us stand out in every room we entered, AKA being different. So to us, our diversity is our competitive advantage. So we never shy away. There's no code switching. We are who we are, and we show up every day as Antoinette Clarke and Tricia Clarke-Stone two girls who came from first generation immigrants and grew up in Brooklyn. It was not always easy. We've had so many obstacles and things that we've had to overcome. But I think also the power of our connection and the support that we give each other has helped us come up in the way that we have and be able to still have those wins and still get over those losses. So it's been, a huge learning experience for us.
I have to say, as I hear you, I'm looking at the screen at both of you. I know, Antoinette, you're familiar. I am also a mom of identical twins. So, the question is, how do you tell them apart? How are they different? It's just so clear that you both are so unique in your own rights. I guess, can you also share a little bit about that dynamic, how you've leaned on each other to almost bring out that individuality even more so than others may have experienced?
Yeah, I think, one good example is when we were coming up, when it would be report card day, our mom purposely would never review our report cards together. So she would take us each into a separate room and review our report cards separately so that we would never compare ourselves to each other. So that was one thing. So there was never a competitive sensibility between each other. So
we pushed each other. And I always say, Trish wants more for me sometimes than I want for myself. So we use each other as inspiration, but we're not competitive with each other.
So when I see a trait or a characteristic or a win or Antoinette winning, it just pushes me or inspires me to say, wow, I want to embrace that, or I wish I had a little bit of that in me. So I think our mom really instilled in us that there's enough of that winning pie to go around. So I think that's one big thing. So, and we take that into our tribe of friends and then also within our professional careers. So we're always rooting for everyone to win because there's enough to go around. I think the other piece is our mom always put us in uncomfortable situations when we were growing up. We went to a Jewish summer camp. She sent us to a Jewish summer camp when we were growing up.
Wow.
Because when we were growing up, we lived in a pretty mixed neighborhood,
but heavily focused on West Indian communities.
So she wanted to make sure that we left our neighborhood and we were exposed to other cultures and other people. But when we went to this Jewish camp, we would bring them kind of stuff from our neighborhood. So, and then when we came back to our neighborhood, we would bring back things we learned at the Jewish summer camp.
Right. So we felt like Christopher Columbus. So our mom instilled that in us from such an early age, and we were able to flex those muscles. So we became comfortable not only with ourselves individually, but also being put in different areas and different, like even now with the jobs that we have, sometimes we are the only other in the room.
We're the outsider. But
Right.
I think too, in the fields that we're in, like with me in marketing and advertising, you're only as good as your last idea. And it's all about diverse thinking. Not saying that there's always diversity in the room, but you're applauded for innovation. And, the way we look at it too is being an outsider lets you invent your own systems.
Right.
And that to us has been, it's been a benefit and not a detriment to us.
Right.
And so we've seen success come out of that. So innovation has really been our operating system. And we think a lot of that has been attributed to our mom.
She set it up well.
Right. And she set that up for us. So we can't, all praise to her essentially for giving us that base and foundation.
She started the toolkit, and then we've only enhanced those tools as we've come into our own and understood how we can activate those tools in different ways.
Right. We continue to sharpen with the relationship that we have with our mentors and our gurus. We always say that, mentors help you, widen your network, and then gurus help you widen your horizon. So, but it's all about kind of surrounding yourself with people that can be your
Gravity and your elevation.
And a lot of that from, the base and foundation that we continue to build and our twinity.
Right. And obviously, you don't have to have a twin to have someone like this in your life. So in our book, we definitely lean into ways on how you can activate that type of relationship and support system with other people in your lives too. But Denya, to your point, your twins are lucky. So to come up in this world and to be born with your first soulmate and to be able to live life together and do life together is an amazing thing, that you always know someone has your back no matter what, especially in the times that we're living in. With the pandemic and being in quarantine, the only other person I felt safe enough to see was Trish. So many people were by themselves. So I just think it's such a huge advantage for us as women and Black women to just have each other. So your twins are in great hands.
And you know, one other thing, it's like growing up, we learned how to play tennis playing doubles. And then we had to learn how to play singles. That is how I think we really became self-aware
of who we were and what our value prop was to the world.
This is amazing. I'm sorry, I get so excited. I think it's, obviously I have that personal connection to, as being a mom of twins. So seeing you guys just, both, just embracing your own, selves, confidence, personality, and just being able to share that, not just through the book, but in your day-to-day experiences. I would like to kind of transition back to something we touched on a bit earlier. Tricia, we talked about, going into a room and not being recognized as the founder. Antoinette, you also mentioned, in the past, going into, meetings and being the only at times. Is there a point, I guess, with both of your experience in media, advertising, and with branded, that you're surprised about the lack of diversity?
Yes. We need to stop this. So I think it's just very weird because obviously we're both in advertising and media, and advertising and media, they help shape culture. And our culture is a diverse culture. So it's weird that there aren't more people that look like us at that table. So I think that's very disconcerting for us.
And two, we have in the industries that we're in, we have the microphone, right? And content and ads have always reflected culture,
where we are, where we're going. So if that is the case, how don't we have more diverse people working in these fields, considering it's consumed by a diverse America? Media and ad agencies should reflect the audiences they're serving, which is the new American mainstream, which Trish talks so much about that when she's consulting with clients.
So, the new American mainstream, that is what, we dub as the diverse America that we live in today. It's the minority majority that's shaping our culture and really driving the economy. So when we look at other fields and sectors that have improved or starting to improve their diversity efforts, so it's kind of mind-boggling when we look at our industry, whether it be ad agencies or media companies, that we're still lagging behind when we're supposed to be the creative and innovative ones, and we're just keeping pace. And that to us is just crazy because we shape so much of what is being consumed in the world, and we set that standard. And obviously, others are guilty of it too, but when we're responsible for so much of the consumption, I think a lot of the onus is on us to get our house in order because we push so much of it out.
Yeah.
And, I think, especially, looking at both of you, it's an inspiration. I think we're all trying to navigate what's next for us in corporate America. And so it's really important to see someone reaching those goals, what you feel is your path in terms of your career. And, I have a quote from Bonin Bo, and it's, "As you rise, you must send the elevator back down." And your book truly opens the elevator doors. You're showing others how to double down on themselves. Can you give an example of a pivotal moment in your career when someone sent that elevator back down for you?
We stay on that elevator, Denya.
Yeah. So Well, first double down, that's when you go all in, when you know you have that calculable advantage. It's banking on the edge that you've got. And I think we probably both have many examples. I'll go quick with one, and then Net, you can give one. But I think
she's always the boss, as you guys can see,
even though she's 5 minutes older. So she always tries to go first, but I'm going to go first this time. So for my example is we're firm believers in sending the elevator back down, because once you reach a level, it's our duty to keep sending that elevator and to put our hand back down and help bring others up with us. So for me, when I think I've experienced it is when Russell said, yes, I will give you the capital so that you can become an entrepreneur and start your own business. And he gave me the funding. But then I think another time was when Christy Hawbegger, who used to be at CAA, and Talitha Watkins, who used to be at CAA, when they introduced me to Will Packer, because Will Packer was who I call the $1 billion man, because he has, amassed $1 billion in the box office, because he has 10 number one films in the box office. You guys might know him, Girls Trip and Ride Along, Straight Outta Compton, and a slew of other, number one films. But basically, he acquired narrative. So, if you guys think about it, I'm a Black woman, obviously, who raised capital from a Black man, and a Black man acquired my company.
And 2 women of color made that
acquisition happen. So this is a rarity. And this needs to become
the norm. I just got chills again.
And this needs to become the norm, because this is how we build generational wealth. Because this is how we stop that massive leakage. I don't know if you have seen that thing that's been going around about our money in our communities, right? So currently a dollar circulates in the Asian communities for a month, in Jewish communities for 20 days, white communities for 17 days.
But the scary thing is how long it circulates in the Black community. 6 hours. So African-American people are buying $1.1 trillion worth of things, and yet only 2 cents of every dollar an African-American spends in this country goes back to Black-owned businesses. That's absurd. So we as a culture need to do better at helping to raise each other up and give each other opportunities, so we keep building that generational wealth, so we can stand the test of time and be able to give that to our kids, and Denya to your kids, and then your kids do that for their kids. This has to be a system that we put in place. Sorry.
Well, please stay there. I was hoping you could share just one of your personal experiences. I know Tricia led, but we're really excited to just hear one of yours as well.
Yes, for me, I have a couple too, and I'll give 2 quick ones. One stands out when I first decided to pivot from being a producer after 12 years. And I was focused on going into the branded entertainment space. And the only real experience I had in that arena was producing integrations when I was on the Tyra Banks show. So I started setting up all these meetings at advertising agencies and branded content studios. And one advertising agency in particular, I went in and met with the head of their brand studio, and we really hit it off, but the salary just wasn't there. I was 100% ready to take a pay cut, because obviously I was doing this pivot, but a girl still has to live. So I had to be realistic of what I was able to do. So after that interview, even though we vibed, I made it clear to her I didn't think I could accept a job for that pay. She, unbeknownst to me, went and sent my resume to MSLO, Martha Stewart's company, because she knew they were looking for someone with my type of experience. 2 weeks after I met with her, I got a phone call from Martha's company calling me in for an interview. I ended up getting that job, and that was my entree into branded integrations. So if it wasn't for that woman who had the foresight, had just the open heart. And at that time, I was super vulnerable, so unsure about who I was and where I was going since I was in that transitional stage. So for her to do that for me gave me so much hope and helped me on this new journey that I'm on now. And then leading to that, when I interviewed at CBS, they took a chance on me. I had 12 years of production experience and not even a year of branded content.
And 2 Emmys.
Oh yeah, and that's it.
Yes.
And only, not even a year of branded content experience, but Joanne Ross, Jared Zerman, Linda Renee, they saw something in me and they gave me an opportunity. So I still thank them till this day. I call Joanne my fairy godmother mentor. She's always looking out for me, all of them for that matter. So that elevator is brought down to me on a daily basis at CBS. So I'm super appreciative of that.
And then we pay it forward over and over for those same reasons.
Yeah.
That's an incredible stories. I mean, in terms of, I think oftentimes we see strong women, in leadership roles and, at times you can almost get defeated or say like, wow, it was so easy for them, and how can I get there? Because it feels so challenging. But I mean, clearly there are some challenges along the way. And it's great that you have stories where we're seeing that people saw something in you. Can you speak a little bit to some of those challenging moments? I know, I have them every once in a while as I'm homeschooling now. So, I might crawl in a little corner and say, oh, what's going on today? But, we always overcome them. Can you give an example of a challenging moment that you had in your career that you were able to overcome?
So I would say for you that the ageism when you were at
you want to speak to when you were pivoting.
Yeah. So also, I guess one of the more challenging, which leads to something what I brought up a bit earlier, was when I was pivoting. Like I was just so scared of leaving something that I knew and felt so safe in. And in production, diversity is welcome because you're a storyteller. So you need to hear diverse stories from different people to share that. And going into more of a corporate America, I was worried how that transition was going to be for me. So I think, as a Black woman, that's always going to be in the back of your head. I don't lead with that as something that's going to hold me back, but it was definitely something I was worried about. And, I had to figure out how I was going to get there on my own, but with the support of, the team at CBS and obviously my friends and family, and also having the confidence knowing I was going to be able to deliver what I came here to do. So I think if you remind yourself and you're self-aware of who you are and what you bring to the table, and also make yourself indispensable. In any job I've ever been in, that's the lens I look through when I'm trying to activate where I'm going. So if you can be indispensable, no one's ever going to get rid of you and you're always going to continue to rise. So even if you feel like you're losing it or you don't have a grasp on something, I think you need to remember that.
And for me, I've experienced everything from, ageism to bias. But I think my biggest challenge was when I moved from being an intrapreneur to an entrepreneur. That startup life is no joke because there is no blueprint, right? We talk so much about how Double Down was this roadmap and blueprint. With a startup, everything is free game. And I was just creating, I was doing things I had never done before. So, and I had no guidance. Even though Russell gave me the seed capital, I had no one riding shotgun with me. So there was no one to bounce off ideas. There was no one I could bounce ideas off of besides Antoinette. And I never wanted to make people I didn't want anyone to see me sweat. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm my own boss. But being an entrepreneur, you have so many more stakeholders you have to appease. I had to appease my investors. I had to appease the client because I was an agency. I had to make sure my teams felt good because they were leaving the big box agencies to come work for me. So I had a lot of people that I was indebted to and had to make sure that I was responsible for. So that level of responsibility and the challenges of making sure I could make payroll, I could deliver for the clients, I could deliver a culture that I had sold my team members. So I would say that was probably the most challenging. And then the moments when I couldn't make payroll, that was challenging. So that could probably lead to a whole nother session. So we'll do that for another day.
Well, I have a few questions popping into the chat. So let me just go ahead and just go in order. There's so much exciting stuff here. Do you feel, oops, it's jumping around on me. Let's see. When you feel like you're repeatedly not being heard by your management because you're one of a few that have the courage to be vocal, what suggestions do you have to help communication among colleagues and management?
So I think when that has happened to me, the approach that I take is I sit back, I would put it in writing, and figure out what parties I need to bring to the table to have an open dialogue. And I always say to myself, who in the organization is the OG? Like, who's the OG that kind of knows where all the bodies are buried, who can help
bring everyone together,
help kind of rally this conversation? Who's the influencer within the organization who has that wide sphere of influence, who can help bring the minds together as well? And then who's that disruptor that can also help
navigate and be an evangelist?
So I think it's figuring out kind of those three archetypes that
you can get on your side and on your team so you can have that dialogue.
That's usually what I've done is seeking counsel from those three types of archetypes, and then kind of laying out my plan, putting it in writing, and then getting people in a room and kind of communicating what my grievances are and coming in with what I think ideally what my solution is, and then hearing from the other side as well.
You mentioned earlier being sent away to a Jewish camp. How do you encourage other minorities who have not been exposed and encourage others to explore others' cultures and lifestyles to just summon the courage to find champions and act on that change too?
Well, I think in the world that we live in now, obviously we're in a virtual world. We have so much more access to things that we wouldn't have back in the day when we were growing up. And I think it's easier and more not as scary and crazy. It's a little bit more disarming because you have the screen there. So I think it's exploring TED Talks and really understanding different cultures and getting a sense of other communities and what's out there. I think even exploring things like this and meeting new people and being open to hearing their experiences.
Yeah, I think it's just putting yourself out there and walking before you run. So everyone has a different appetite for these things, and you have to move at your own pace. But I think it's about making sure that you at least start taking those steps
to get there.
We also have some great questions, I guess, just in terms of an update for you both. Tricia, the question is, what exactly are you doing now in terms of what's the next step in being an entrepreneur? And then Antoinette, does your company offer internships within your specific group?
Yeah, so
Tricia's not doing anything right now. No, I'm kidding.
I imagine that. So after the company was acquired, I stayed on for 2 years as part of my agreement. So at the end of last year, I hit my earnout and all those amazing things. So I'm still consulting and advising for WP Narrative and WPM. And then I'm also consulting and advising for Fortune 500 companies, which is amazing. I am also on Discovery's new show, I Quit, which is a show about 6 entrepreneurs that basically say, I quit, to leave their day jobs to follow their entrepreneurial dreams. I'm one of the mentors on there, along with Debbie Sterling and Harley, who's the president of Shopify. So that's on Discovery. So that's amazing. In addition to that, Antoinette and I are also working on a new double down project platform that is super exciting.
And hopefully we'll be able to share more about that in the coming months.
And then I'm also in the process of writing my new business plan for what my new business will be next year.
Oh, that's so much. Thank you. And Antoinette, are there any internships available in your group?
Yeah. So the group I work for at CBS is the IMAX group, which is an amazing group. It's a branded content group, and it's a lean, mean machine of all women and one feisty male, Alex. So it's a great group, and Linda, who leads the group, she's been a huge advocate for paying it forward and getting a lot of younger people into our group. So yes, we do have internships. Actually, this past summer, even in the COVID world, we were able to do have 2 interns who did everything virtually. They were amazing. They were adapted to our new working style. So yes, there are definitely internships available. So you guys should go on to CBS and HR and be able to navigate that.
Thank you. We have, I guess this question is just a little more, it's a bit personal, but I guess it's more in terms of how you're applying your work. What trends in consumer behavior are particularly important to you? I know sometimes we're looking at marketing just overall, we think of culture, diversity, but I guess is there something in particular that's happening that you're personally connected to at this point?
Trends in consumer behavior. Yeah, I think one thing actually, there are so many. One project, a few clients that I'm working for now, we've been leaning heavily into these culture codes to basically highlight just that, trends that are happening, especially within the new American mainstream and that minority majority, and looking at what they're doing that's different from kind of the general market. One thing that I'm really looking at now is not only what the American mainstream is doing, but how brands can really step up and integrate and interact with them. So one trend that I'm really looking at too is equity building, right? And how brands are looking or should be looking to build more equity with the newer American mainstream cohort that transcends just a transaction. So to me, that's one big area that I've been really focusing on. I think the other thing that I've been looking at too is data, right? In general, when we look at behavior, so many data knows all about data. It's data. And this is the perfect thing, right? I think oftentimes, because we have so much access to data, people think they become experts at having a level of understanding of
what's really happening
in the world. And I think what the data lacks is empathy and cultural intelligence. So we all have access to data, but you also then have to know what to do with that data. So that's what I've been doing a lot with some of the clients that I've been working with, being able to take that data and adding kind of that heart and soul to it, and that empathetic lens and that level of cultural intelligence, and breaking that down to some key trends and insights.
Well, ladies, this has just been an incredible conversation. I wish we weren't running out of time, but we are. I have one final question, which is, We're looking at your book, Double Down, Bet on Yourself and Succeed on Your Terms. Where can we find it? Where can we hear from you again? Speaking engagements, how can we reach both of you?
So Double Down is available everywhere books are sold. So if you don't have it yet, you guys should pick up a copy for sure. And then in terms of just what's going on with us, our Instagram account. So I'm Net, NETTE_Clarke. And CLARKE. And then I'm Tricia 002, TRICIA 002. And then also info on doubledownbook.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Antoinette and Tricia, for sharing your journeys with us. I know your paths are inspirational. Your book is definitely going to help pave the way for the next generation of diverse men and women. So thank you for an exciting session.
Thanks, Denya.
Thanks. For our next session, we have a fireside chat with Aaliyah Kemet. Aaliyah is the Vice President of Creative and Digital Communications at McCormick Company. Her team